Good afternoon, students.
Afternoon, madam.
So this afternoon we are going to learn a poem. Have you heard the name Robert Frost any time before?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
In intermediate.
Intermediate. You studied a poem written by Robert Frost. Do you remember the title of that poem?
The road not taken.
The Road Not Taken. Okay. Can any one of you, one or two of you, tell all of us what you understood of that poem?
When you decide a path, there are going to be many problems you are going to face.
Okay.
So the poem indicates the attitude and readiness of the poet
Okay.
to accept the challenges
Okay.
and also to come out of them
Okay.
successfully. So he uses his physical way and mental approach in that,
Okay.
and finally he leads to success.
Okay. So would you call it an inspiring, motivating poem,
Definitely.
which is to be read by all young people?
It's right.
Yes. Anyone else would like to share their views about what you understood of the poem?
Yes, ma'am. It was an inspiring poem.
Okay.
There are many problems in their life.
Okay.
In the way, they will reach the goals in patience.
Okay. Right. So that was a good poem that you studied in intermediate, where the poet has been very inspiring, and he talks about the problems and how we have to overcome them and still find success and achievement in life. Robert Frost, was an American poet, and another important well-known poem written by him is Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. In that poem, there is a famous line which was loved by the first Prime Minister of this country, Jawaharlal Nehru, and which can be a quotation that all of us can cherish for our lives. And he says, "And miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." Meaning that there's a lot of work to be done. It's not yet time to go to sleep. It's not yet time to go to rest. Imagine this line was loved by the first Prime Minister of the country soon after independence. So you can very well think and understand why he loved that line, because there was a big task in front of him. And we also could use it as a quote in our lives, because all of us have to do a lot, achieve a lot, and therefore let that be a guiding line for us too. Now today we will look at this poem, Mending Wall. Look at the title of the poem closely and try to tell me what you understand just by looking at the title or reading the title. Mending Wall.
The wall is a barrier,
Okay, wall could be a barrier.
and the repairs it needs to be done.
Okay, is that the meaning of the word mending?
Yes.
Yeah, mending perhaps means the repairs that need to be done to the wall. Right, let's look at the first few lines. Look at the way he starts the poem. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. Very simple language. Let's ask that question to ourselves. Do we like walls?
Because obviously man doesn't like wall or barriers.
I am thinking of wall as a support to stand. See, I am much older than you, and I think I would love a wall if I have to stand for a long time so that I can put my hand on it or rest my back against it. Okay? But then here the poet is talking about something there is that doesn't love a wall. That is, he is almost, turning our attention to the point that he is going to elaborate upon in the rest of the poem. He is going to talk about things that don't love a wall. The first line itself indicates that strongly. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it. That is, the frozen referring to the damp earth. And when the earth is damp and wet, say in winter, because this is all European climate that he is talking about, where the, not European perhaps, even the American winters are very cold and harsh. There's snow and frost and ice. And these walls tend to leave gaps, or the boulders and the stones seem to fall all over from these walls. I would also like you to observe what kind of wall he is talking about. All of us see walls which are well cemented, bricks. Is he using any of these words in the poem? Bricks and cement. He's talking about a wall that sends the frozen groundswell under it. That is, under the compound wall, the earth is damp, earth is swollen, and the compound wall standing on the earth seems to have lost its shape. So there is something to do with the shape of the wall too. The shape of the wall has changed because of the dampness of the earth, which has caused a swelling under the wall, and therefore the wall is a little disturbed. Groundswell is a phrase which is used with a different meaning also in our day-to-day life. We can use this word groundswell to mean increasing popularity of a person. Like, say, if a film star Chiranjeevi comes for a public meeting, there is a groundswell, as if there are lots of people just born on the ground then and there. So groundswell means an increasing number of people, a large number of people raising an issue or talking about something. That means groundswell. But here we are literally referring to the ground, the swelling of the ground. And spills the upper boulders in the sun. Look at these words. Boulders, what are they? What do you think are boulders? Small stones or big stones? Big stones. Boulders are generally used to refer to something big, heavy, huge and large. And spill is some kind of a, a delicate act and used with reference to liquids generally, like oil or water or milk. Hold the glass of milk carefully. Hold the glass of water carefully. Hold the bottle of oil carefully. It may spill. The word spill, which you use with liquids, the poet is using with a solid. Boulder is a solid thing, heavy thing, which can't be moved so easily. Look at the way he is using this word spill with
Different way.
Yeah, in a different way, with something large and huge and heavy, an object called the boulder. This is how poets can use words to make us understand that he is talking of a compound wall which is not a cemented one, and spills the upper boulders in the sun. So the thing that you have to understand here is how he is using the word spill, which is used with liquids, as a reference to the boulders which are huge and large. And what is he trying to say by using these two words, that is spill the verb and boulders the noun? And makes gaps even two can pass abreast. And so when these boulders fall, there are gaps in the wall. Two people can just pass right across the wall. There is that much of a gap. Two can pass abreast, that is just walking side by side. To make the wall, boulders. Okay? We don't have the brick, the cement, the plastering, because in such walls you will not have such big gaps. But in these kinds of walls, you can easily have a big gap. The work of hunters is another thing. In the first line of the poem, he said, something there is that doesn't love a wall. And we understood that it was something in nature because of the groundswell from under the wall. In this line, he says, it's the work of hunters. The work of hunters is another thing. Hunters who ride fast on their horsebacks leap over the walls. And when they leap, again the boulders get disturbed. They spill or they fall on either sides of the wall. So hunters, the work of hunters is another thing, means hunters also don't like these walls. If the walls were not there, they wouldn't have leapt. They would have just raced across the plains. I have come after them and made repair, where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. Who is this I? Robert Frost, the poet. Yes, the poet or the speaker in this poem. So he says, as soon as the hunters leapt over the walls on their horsebacks and disturbed the wall, the poet would go and look at the stones that have fallen and try to lift the stones one by one. Either the wall has gaps, or there's another problem. If the stones are removed, the rabbits come out of their hiding and they become prey to the yelping dogs, to the crying dogs. So if you don't remove the stones, the rabbits are safe. If you remove the stones, the rabbits are unsafe. If you remove the stones, you can still make the compound wall again. So therefore the poet would come after the hunters to pick up the stones and put them on the wall, but found that the rabbits were hiding under the stones and felt pity for the rabbits, felt sad because they would be caught by the dogs. There is so much of observation of the nature, the environment around him here. The gaps, I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. What are the gaps? Which gaps?
Borders.
Yeah. The gaps created by the boulders which have spilled over, which have fallen on either side. The gaps, I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made. I mean, you don't hear someone with a hammer or with a very strong iron object hitting at the wall and demolishing the wall. You don't even see people making this kind of a wall. It's done quite casually, as he describes it later, how they make the wall. So no one has seen people making this wall or breaking this wall. But at spring mending time, we find them there. But when it is the turn of the spring season, we find that many of these walls have to be repaired. That's when the snow would have melted and you can see the surfaces of the boulders. Otherwise, there is a spread of white, that is the snow, and you don't know where the boulders are sometimes. Or even if you try to do any work in winter, it's too difficult because of the cold climate and snow and frost. So people wait for the season to be over and then take up any repairing jobs. So here the poet waits for spring. That's when the mending time starts. Mending, what does it mean? Repairing the wall, yes. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill. Then I went in search of my neighbor who stays beyond the hill now, who doesn't stay by my side in the other plot. He has a house there. But he doesn't stay there, he stays beyond the hill. So when it was springtime, I went in search of my neighbor. I found him beyond the hill and I told him, look, the compound wall is all out of shape because of the groundswell, because of the hunters, and now we'll have to set it right. And on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. So we appoint to meet on a particular day that is convenient for both of us, and we walk the line. We walk on either side of the compound wall. We walk together to repair the wall, to mend the wall. We keep the wall between us as we go. So they are walking on either side of the wall, but they keep the wall. That is, they keep repairing the wall. they see that the wall is there intact by picking up the boulders, putting them back, and seeing that the wall is repaired, the wall is kept. That's what he tries to emphasize. To each the boulders that have fallen to each. The poet talks of this effort between himself and the neighbor of walking across the line of the compound wall and repairing it. To each the boulders that have fallen to each one picks up the boulders from his side and puts them back on the wall. For a moment, can two of you, can you just come and act as if you were lifting the boulders on either side of the wall and putting them back? Two of you.
Yeah, good morning. Did you have your tea?
Yes, I had.
Sorry to disturb you.
It's okay.
Thing is that my wall is not looking like me fit.
Yeah,
It needs some repair.
obviously.
We have not bothered about it for long. Okay.
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
I think bricks are scattered everywhere.
Yeah, it's looking very scattered.
Sure.
I think it needs some repair.
Let's go on with the work.
Yeah, we'll start it.
This brick is very heavy to lift, man.
Oh, it's like, yeah, I'll also help you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's steady, I think so.
Yeah, you're right.
The other one, oh,
Is there any need, I say, to do this work?
obviously.
I feel sorry for this. Okay.
This one is lighter than.
It's small.
Yeah, it's small. Pick the other stone on the side of your.
Oh, it became too much weathered. It's
I'll
looking-
help you. Wait.
Okay.
I think it's right now, balanced.
Yeah, it's balanced. Like how we are good balanced neighbors. Finally, the wall indicates that we are good neighbors.
Yes.
So you saw both of them building the wall as if one of them was the poet and the other was the neighbor. Both of them you saw were doing the same thing, right? Picking up the boulders from either side of the wall and not fighting. Were they fighting? They weren't. They were talking to each other and in a very friendly way they were putting the wall back into shape. And some are loaves and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Some of the boulders look like loaves of bread in rectangular flat shapes, and some are rounded like balls. And as they are doing it, they cast a spell. That is, they almost use words of magic to make the boulders stand in a balanced manner so that they don't spill or fall again. What do the two neighbors say to the boulders? Stay where you are until our backs are turned. Their words are the same, okay? The words of the neighbors. They tell the boulders. The boulders are inanimate objects, okay? But they tend to move or fall. And what are these two neighbors telling the boulders? Stay where you are until our backs are turned. Don't fall. Be where you are. As if, they are casting a magic spell on these boulders. Both of them doing the same job, casting the magic spell on these boulders. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Their fingers, the poet says, have become rough by picking them up, setting them, and then picking more, and so on, and the length of the time that they are spending in repairing the wall. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. So to the poet, he feels it's a game, it's a sport, it's an outdoor game. Like you have shuttle badminton, where you have one on each side of the net, and they send the shuttle this side and that side. Here what they are doing, they're just standing on either side of the wall and repairing the wall. It's an outdoor game, he says. it comes to little more. Maybe it's a little more than an outdoor game too. There where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all pine and I am apple orchard. On his side, there are pine trees. So the pine trees, their branches, their leaves, they bend towards the side of the poet's plot. The poet himself has an apple orchard, lots of apple trees, whose branches and fruits again lean onto his neighbor's plot of land. Both of them have not cut their branches. The neighbor has not cut his pine tree branches and the poet has not cut his apple tree branches. They allow the branches to bend and lean on the other side of the wall. When there is no problem, why have the wall? You are not cutting off the branches of your trees. You don't mind the fruits growing on the other side of the wall. Your fruits on the other side and his fruits on your side. You don't mind all that. Then why have the wall? That's what the poet is going to argue. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. As we are building the wall, repairing the wall, I tell him, look, you have no fear that I am going to take away your pine cones. And I have no fear that you are going to take away my apples. The poet tries to persuade, make his neighbor understand that perhaps they don't need a wall at all. Yet, they continue to walk along the line of the wall and keep putting the boulders in their place. This conversation is going on between the two of them, and still they continue to mend the wall. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. My neighbor replies to what I say. He says, good fences make good neighbors. We must have this wall as a fence. That's the reason why we are good neighbors. One should learn to be within one's limits. That is what the neighbor is saying. So good fences teach us to be in our limits. And that's how we can be good neighbors. That's how we can respect each other's existence and life. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Spring, it was spring season, mending time. And the spring, the warmth of the spring, and the fact that the poet himself has got a different idea which is other than the neighbors. All these things are acting on his mind, and the poet wonders, can I try and put a notion means another idea, in his head? Whose head? The neighbor's head. Why do they make good neighbors? Do you see the word why in italics? In a different kind of print that's called italics. So the poet asks the neighbor, why do they make good neighbors? He wants a strong reason as an answer to his question, why? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Okay, when there are cows, the cows just wander and start grazing the grass in somebody else's plot of land. If there are cows, you can build a wall so that they don't go into the other man's land. But here there are no cows. Neither the poet has cows nor the neighbor. There are no cows. One doesn't mind the branches leaning against the wall onto the other plot of land, and still they have this wall just because the neighbor says good fences make good neighbors. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Now the poet comes out very strongly with his feelings. If I were to build a wall, the poet says, I would want to know whom I am walling in and whom I am walling out. That is, what are the things I am going to allow in my life, what are the things I am not going to allow in my life. Walling in means letting in. Walling out, not allowing anything to come in, keeping them away. Them could mean anything, people, ideas, attitudes, right? So he says, before I build a wall, there is a barrier in my mind, from the physical representation of a wall, take it to the mental notion of a barrier in our mind. Barriers could mean, so many kinds of things. Not liking a person because he doesn't smile well. Not liking a person because he doesn't talk well. Not liking a person because he is not handsome. Not liking a person because he doesn't wear good clothes. All these are barriers. Do we need to have all these barriers?
The poet is in dilemma, you mean?
Yes, maybe he is. Let's go on with the poem a little more. What I was walling in or walling out. So walling in means letting things in. Walling out, keeping things out. And to whom I was like to give offense. And he always felt that if he built a wall, he would like to know why he was building the wall. If he built the wall, was anyone offended? If he didn't build the wall, was anyone offended? He wanted to think deeply whether the wall, building the wall meant an offense or not building the wall meant an offense. That offense means something that hurts you or hurts another person. Some wrong action that hurts you or hurts another person.